Good morning. Welcome to this session. The title of this session is Philosophy for Children Hawaii, Cultivating and Nurturing Collaborative Civic Spaces. My name is Amber Strong Makaiau. Come on in. I work at the University of Hawaii in two capacities. I'm in the College of Education, and I work with pre-service social studies teachers in the secondary program. And I also work at the Uehiro Academy for Philosophy and Ethics in Education. It's a mouthful, but it's better known as the home of Philosophy for Children Hawaii. And this is my colleague.
And I'm Chad Miller. I work with Amber in both places, but I work with English language arts teacher candidates, and I serve in the Uehiro Academy in the teacher development category, whereas Amber is mostly responsible for curriculum and research. We are also both former public school teachers. We spent about a decade together at Kailua High School.
All right, so in our presentation, which is going to be more of a workshop because we want to engage all of you in the practice today, what we're going to do is we're going to begin up front here with an overview of Philosophy for Children, kind of the conceptual framework behind it, what are some of the key activities and strategies, what are the roles of the teacher in a Philosophy for Children classroom, and what are some of the participant outcomes that we're looking for when we do Philosophy for Children. Then we're going to make some connections between Philosophy for Children and this idea of deliberative democracy and deliberative pedagogy, current movements in social studies and current movements in language arts. And then we are going to do some Philosophy for Children together. So we're really looking forward to engaging you in this process. Just like Chad said, my introduction to Philosophy for Children is I went to a John Dewey Elementary School. And when I was learning to become a teacher in the College of Education, I was really searching for strategies that would help me to create that sort of classroom in my high school social studies classroom. And I was reading a lot of theory and getting to learn about Dewey and Freire and all these big names, but I wasn't finding actual strategies for bringing this theory to life. And then, at the suggestion of my mom, which is a longer story I could tell you in another day, I ended up taking Tom Jackson's Philosophy for Children class in the philosophy department. And it was like everything clicked. I finally found classroom structures for bringing all of this theory to life. And for the next 10 years as a social studies teacher, Philosophy for Children became the way in which I taught social studies in the high school setting.
And my introduction's a little bit different. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a public school kid, so I didn't have the John Dewey experience in my K through 12 schooling. I had the experience where you sat in rows and you memorized a bunch and you filled in bubble sheets. Luckily, I could tackle people pretty well, and I got to go to a college I probably couldn't have gotten into otherwise. I went to a Jesuit school where everything was focused around doing philosophy. Class sizes were small, we sat in circles, we read things, and we thought together. And it was the first time since kindergarten, I really felt like I was learning. And I became a philosophy major because I just wanted to wonder about these things that I've been wondering about my entire life with my peers and read about what people in the past have written about it. And I knew I didn't want to go into academic philosophy, so my advisor said there's a guy in Hawaii doing philosophy with kids, that's all I know. So I started checking it out, decided to come here and become a teacher because I wanted to give back. I didn't think that people who are public school kids should be robbed of this experience and wanted to become a teacher. But the first day I stepped foot on Kailua High School as a teacher candidate, I met Amber, and then I ended up meeting Dr. Jackson after that. So needless to say, the rest is history. So when we say philosophy for children, if you look online, there's a million different definitions of it. And as philosophers, we would expect that many definitions. But for the context of teachers, what we like to say is philosophy for children is approach to teaching and learning that is defined by this conceptual framework. And we're going to talk a little bit about it later. But it's essentially around community, inquiry, philosophy, and reflection. And what also we provide teachers is a set of classroom activities to help make those things appear in your classroom.
So conceptually, as Chad said, Philosophy for Children is broken down into four main pillars. We focus on building community. We focus on learner-centered inquiry, the activity of philosophy, and reflection. And there's a host of theorists and researchers behind all of this body of work, which many of you are probably familiar with. But when we talk about community, we're talking about things like social constructivism with Lev Vygotsky. The founder of Philosophy for Children talked about creating communities of inquiry. And we're also talking about multicultural communities, communities that are respectful of diverse perspectives, that are participating and emulating the type of democracy that we want to create in this world. When we talk about inquiry, we're talking about learner-centered inquiry that John Dewey wrote a lot about learning by doing. We're talking about authentic inquiry, which is the type of inquiry that we're at places like the Highlander Folk School, which was an adult school where adults got to sit together in a circle, generate questions about things that they cared and wondered about, and talk about them with each other and problem solve together. And that's actually the place that Rosa Parks went to right before she had the strength to say, I'm not sitting in the back of the bus anymore. And when we talk about reflection, we're talking about things like habits of mind that Art Costa writes about, metacognition. We're talking about being reflective practitioners that Schoen has written about, but also this big idea of reflection that Paulo Freire wrote about being reflective about the world so that we can become agents of change and create a new reality. When we talk about philosophy, Chad's going to highlight how this is a little bit different.
Philosophy carries a lot of weight in Western culture, especially in America. When you hear the word philosophy, you automatically have this vision of what it is. And so when we tell people we do philosophy with kids, oftentimes they think that we're engaging them in reading Kant and Descartes, and that's not necessarily what we're primarily concerned with. We like to think of those types of philosophers. Academic philosophy is big P philosophy, or as Dr. J, our mentor, says, philosophy. Those are the things where we're primarily dealing with philosophers and philosophies. We're not saying that's not important. It's very, very important, but we're not primarily concerned with that. What we're concerned with is little p, the little p philosophy, the lowercase philosophy that we're all born with. That sense of wonderment that is alive and well when you enter school, and as you march through school, it starts to dissipate. And what we want to do as philosophers is we want to keep that philosophy alive and well and part of the learning process.
So when we start to think about philosophy as an activity, it becomes a way for students and teachers of any age group to engage with content in a variety of learning contexts. And when we say engage, we mean asking questions that they care and wonder about, making connections between what they're studying and the world around them. A lot of those things that are going to be talked about at this conference when we're imagining what we mean by schools of the future. But we really see that philosophy has a role in creating this sort of engagement.
Well, how do we make this happen in the classroom? And what we're going to basically kind of gloss over a little bit today and engage in some of these activities is there's a handful of activities, or flagship activities I like to call them, that we provide with teachers. And one of those ideas is intellectual safety and the use of a community ball that we're going to be using today. And then the Good Thinkers Toolkit to help teachers and students own their thinking. And then the plain vanilla deliberative inquiry that we're going to engage in later. Also in elementary schools, many people use these things called magic words. And lastly, we're always going to have a somewhat systematic evaluation of our community and our inquiry.
So in addition to there being a conceptual framework and a set of activities, we've also found over the years that there's a set of dispositions or commitments or shifts, if you're not already doing them, that teachers need to make to practice philosophy for children. Number one, you need to be willing to live the examined life yourself, that you're willing to be a co-inquirer sitting alongside your students and saying, you know what, I might not know the answer to that, let's go find this out. That leads to approaching education as a shared activity between teacher and student. Number three, you need to see content not just as the subject matter or the standards or the textbook that you're responsible for teaching, but also the learner and the teacher's beliefs and the learner and the teacher's experiences. You need to view philosophy as a general theory of education, make philosophy a living classroom practice through some of those strategies that we showed you, and then be willing to challenge contemporary measures of assessment where it's not just about these in-course exams or these standardized tests, but more of the activity that we do together along the way, and we're constantly assessing and reflecting and growing with one another.
And after years of research and reflection, we've realized that there's a set of outcomes that people can expect when you implement philosophy for children in your classroom. One of those things is good judgment. We begin to start making better decisions. Also, this idea of becoming an ethical community member. We also begin to engage in philosophical reflection, not just reflection, but philosophical reflection. And we begin to be empathetic towards other people, especially other perspectives that are different than our own. Also, we begin to find learning joyous. And lastly, it becomes a transformative experience. It begins to change the person I am, not just the student I am, but the very person that I am.
And when we look at these outcomes, we're not only seeing them as the outcomes of philosophy for children, but we're looking really at them as, wouldn't this be the types of things that people need to engage in a deliberative democracy? And this is why we're starting to look at philosophy for children as a deliberative pedagogy. Deliberative pedagogy is a relatively new term that's coming out of some work at the Kettering Foundation. It incorporates deliberative decision-making with teaching and learning across the curriculum. The primary goal isn't civic education per se, but for students to develop commitment, knowledge, and skills necessary for creating and maintaining equitable, diverse, and democratic spaces, whether it be in the local community, the workplace, the nation, or world. So this is not your traditional civics of learning the 3 branches of government and learning the process of how government works. It's actually modeling ideal democracy in the very structures and the way that you interact with one another in the classroom. And if any of you are familiar with this document, this is the C3 framework. This is the new national movement in social studies that's now framing social studies in this country, and a number of states are using this document to rewrite their state social studies standards. Hawaii is one of them. You should expect within the next year, new social studies standards are going to come out for public review here in the state of Hawaii. But the C3 framework, it talks about getting kids prepared for the challenges of college and career, and it's united with the 3rd critical element, preparation for civic life. And they write, our democratic republic will not sustain unless students are aware of their changing cultural and physical environments, know the past, read, write, and think deeply, and act in ways that promote the common good. And it's for these reasons that we were asked to write this brief that you all have in your hands. And if you don't, I have more copies, but they should be at the back. That makes a connection between the types of shifts that social studies need to make, social studies teachers need to make if they're going to enact the C3 framework in their classrooms. And it is going to outline all of the strategies that we're going to give to you today as well.
And I am the 2012 Hawaii State Teacher of the Year, and the National Network of State Teachers of the Year reached out to me to try to ask me to make the connection between philosophy for children as a classroom practice and the Common Core state standards, specifically those for English language arts. And if you look at the ELA standards, essentially what they're asking for is they want to create people that can think responsibly for themselves, articulate those ideas in a variety of forms to other people, and be able to support those ideas with relevant evidence and logical reasoning, as well as listening to perspectives and ideas that are different than their own. And so if you look at the spirit of the Common Core, it fits in nearly perfectly with what we're trying to do in Philosophy for Children in Hawaii.
And before we jump in this together, I just want to end with why is all of this important? And this is a blog that I wrote, I think I wrote it during the election. I didn't know what the outcome of the election was going to be. And I talked about if you want to teach civility, start with intellectual safety. And that's one of the key things that we're talking about here in Philosophy for Children. But in this blog I wrote, as educators, we're in the privileged position of creating opportunities for our students to experience democratic life as it could be, instead of simply recreating democratic life as it is. And the belief is if they can experience this way in which people care about one another, can think with one another through tough issues and problems of democracy, then they know it's possible. And when they get out into the world and they're having to wrestle with these issues or in tough work situations, instead of thinking like that it's never going to be possible for us to do this, they can draw from that experience that they had in the classroom and say, I know this is possible, and I'm going to strive towards that and create a new reality. And that's really what we're aiming to do with Philosophy for Children. So
that's a fast forward background to what we're going to do today, and we're going to get to it. So we're going to do it ourselves. And before we get started, though, we want to make sure, since we're talking about our own questions and ideas, well, we can't see it here, but we need to identify this idea of intellectual safety. None of this type of thinking can happen if you're not in an environment conducive for learning and collaborative learning, or deliberative democracy. So what we say is intellectual safety is really the cornerstone of everything that we do in Philosophy for Children. Essentially what that means is that any idea or any question will be accepted so long as it is respectful for all people in that circle. And so what we're really trying to get at is being an awareness of our peers, but also of the raw thinking that happens when we grow. We want that to be able to emerge in the classroom as well.
And intellectual safety is something we spend a lot of time with the kids at the beginning of the year, and then it's an ongoing term that's used in the classroom that gets referenced and become part of assessment. But this really terrible slide that you can't see is the definition of intellectual safety in the center. And then with a group of 9th graders at Kailua High School, we came up with examples and counterexamples of what it looks like, and all the kids had this on their folder. And then they had a rubric that every single day they would rate themselves on how well they're doing with intellectual safety. And I just want to emphasize, intellectual safety is about you thinking about what comes out of your mouth. It's not saying that you have to respect everything that other people are saying. It's about being mindful of the things that you're putting out into the world and the way in which you're listening and responding to others.
And we had a colleague write on, it's more than just being nice. It's really creating the type of atmosphere that Amber's talking about.
So one of the strategies that we have for maintaining intellectual safety in the classroom is something called a community ball. This is also made by students and teachers on one of the first days of school. They sit in a circle. The teacher generates some questions that help the students get to know more about one another and also introduces them to the complexity of the content that they're going to be studying in the class. And they get a skein of yarn and a hollow yellow tube, and they wind the yarn around this tube and share these questions with one another. And at the end, the teacher uses a zip tie. We didn't have that before. It's a new invention. And creates this community ball. We have a video online if you want to see how to do it. But the purpose of the community ball is to mediate turn-taking in the classroom. And it's really about redistributing power. So the teacher isn't the one that is calling on the students. It's the actual classroom that's mediating the turn-taking. And how it works is the person with the ball is the speaker. The person with the ball chooses who speaks next, and the person with the ball, if you get thrown the ball or invited with the ball and you don't want to say anything, you always have the right to pass and say that you need more time to think. And the whole purpose of creating it too, as we were talking about earlier, is the kids take ownership over this, that this is a symbol of we're now going to be intellectually safe with one another.
So now plain vanilla is what we're going to engage in, and this is a flagship activity for our teachers, because I think oftentimes when we think of philosophical inquiry or inquiry, teachers are like, yeah, I agree, it's an awesome idea, but how do I do it? And what plain vanilla does is it provides a very structured setup to have a very free thinking within it. So the very first thing you do in plain vanilla is you read something, or what we mean by is you're exposed to some sort of stimulus. As an English teacher, oftentimes it is a reading, or a video, or a piece of artwork. The next thing that everybody does is you formulate a question. And this question isn't the type of question that you'd find at the end of a book chapter. It's actually something, as you read this or you engage with this, what does this make you wonder about? We like to call them philosophical questions, or my elementary school colleagues call them juicy wonderings. They're things that you really want to figure out with your peers. And then the next thing that we do is we vote. Everybody's going to have a vote, and the reason why we vote is it's the idea of distribution of power. The teacher doesn't select the avenue we're going. The students are going to be the ones that select the avenue that we take. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write. And the reason why we're going to write is that provides us with that think time that teachers oftentimes forget to give our students. And that way we're also connecting the inquiry process, which is oftentimes thought of as a verbal concept, to the writing process. So the two are linked, one informs the other. And then we're going to engage in dialogue, inquiry, and deliberation about this concept, about this question. And the last thing that we're going to do before we leave is we're going to reflect and evaluate. We're going to reflect on what did we learn from this, how is it connected to me, but also how did we do? Were we being intellectually safe? Were we listening to each other? Did we scratch beneath the surface?
So that's a lot. So we're going to actually experience it so that you remember it. And I just want to add, there's more layers to all of this the deeper you get into philosophy for children. So for example, with the questions, we referenced the Good Thinkers Toolkit. Tom Jackson at the University of Hawaii has developed a set of thinking tools developed out of formal logic of philosophy that give kids and teachers tools for asking questions like, what do you mean by that? Reasons, assumptions, inferences. Is what's being said true? Examples and counterexamples. So we're not going to have you use the Good Thinkers Toolkit today, but if you're interested in learning more about that, we can share that with you as well.
And I wrote a blog post. It's just called how to teach the philosophical question. You can probably find it if you look on Google or anything.
Okay, so here's how this is going to work. What we have is we have strips of paper right here that look like this. And today what we're going to do instead of reading is we're going to show you a video. It's a 4-minute video, and we have pens as well as if you need them. Your task while we're watching the video is to generate a question that you would want to think about with our group here today. And the question can be something specific about the video, but it can also be something that it makes you think about your own life, the meaning of life, larger things. But your task is to generate a question that you really want to think about with the people in this room today. So Chad is going to pass out the paper. We've also got markers. When we're done with our questions, what we're going to do is we're going to transition and we're going to move over to our circle. And then we're going to use our community ball to have people share their question. And then we're going to be voting on the question that we want to do some inquiry around. So that's the process that we're going to engage in. And I saw people scribbling this down. Again, it's in that C3 brief that you have as a handout as well. So I'm going to cue up the video. And your task is to be thinking of a question. Any questions about the process so far? All right. You guys are ready. And again, the stimulus is a lot of times driven by the particular course that you're teaching, if you're a secondary teacher, or what you're focusing on in your elementary classroom. And again, it can be anything. Fiction, nonfiction, video. It could be going on a learning trip. It could be doing a lab, listening to a guest speaker. So the stimulus can really be anything, but a lot of times we use text in classrooms.
This is my home. I chose this place. They know I'm the head here. Some of them call me the mayor. Some of them call me the governor. I just start cracking up. I love our community. Everybody know everybody here. I feel that it's my responsibility to make sure they're getting the things that they need.
When we start to accept that it's okay for people to live out of doors, to live in encampment, it really distracts us from the ultimate goal, which is trying to get people into stable long-term housing.
No doubt there's a homeless problem.
More homeless than ever before.
The homeless are just laying in the sidewalks everywhere.
That presents a problem for both government and businesses.
You know, you have a lot of people visiting from around the world.
If something isn't done sooner, it could drive people away.
Yet another homeless camp finds itself
with hundreds of occupants. Local officials have conducted periodic sweeps.
We've been keeping an ongoing dialogue with Twinkle and the other leaders from the encampment. The fields highlighted in yellow are those that we've been able to refer to the City Housing First program. Well, we're very hopeful with some of these new resources coming on that we can move more people into housing, not just in Waianae, throughout the whole state. We're not going to take immediate action without talking to people first. Because these are people who don't trust government because they honestly feel that the system has failed them.
The biggest thing on my mind right now is if they come and do a sweep. We'll see. There's some concerns that we do have here. Number one, we've been having a lot of stealing going on. Yeah. If I catch anyone stealing, trust and believe you will be out of here. I will not tolerate with that. This is our community. We should be working together, not against each other. I'm surprised that we are still here. I think they don't know what to do with us, and we've been on top of things and been cooperating. That's why we set rules.
Mele, you home?
You have a mandatory meeting.
Next week, Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, about 9 o'clock in the morning, you will see the state coming in. So be aware, yeah? Please take out your guys' rubbish, keep your areas clean, keep it up, guys.
The best part of my job? My kids. Knowing that they're happy, they're satisfied, and they're okay. I lost my twins, yeah. So with me having the kids here, I believe they feel the gap that I lost. They are me, and they make me.
There are plenty of encampments that I go to that no one's the boss, no one's the leader. It's man for himself. And those ones are really dangerous. Hello. In order for us to really solve this crisis, we have to realize that from homelessness to affordable housing, the gap is way too big. Where else are they supposed to go? How's you guys going swimming without me?
How are you guys?
It's actually typical in Polynesia to have communal living. So I'm a huge proponent that if they were going to come up with a solution, it got to come from these people.
Come on, baby. Our hand finally went out. I believe that we are the solution, to the problem that it is happening out here in the Hawaiian Islands about being homeless. The sad part about it is our own people that lives here, our own culture that is homeless in our own home. Everybody's American dream would be like a 2-story house, a castle. My dream is to just be left alone.
Okay, so on purpose, we picked something that has multiple perspectives. It's very contemporary. It is a problem of democracy that we're all responsible for. So I just want to remind you right now, what you're going to do is you're going to be thinking of a question. And as you're thinking of a question, you also keep in mind this idea of intellectual safety. So even by the types of questions that we ask, we're being mindful of the other people that we're going to engage in this inquiry with one another. Philosophy for children is not debate. It's inquiry. And there's a really big difference between inquiry and debate. A lot of times in debate, you don't have to believe your perspective and point of view. You're just trying to assert it with as many facts as you can. Inquiry is about thinking with one another, and it has a social emotional element to it where you're caring about the people that you're thinking with. So as you engage, think of a question, and then we're going to invite all of you to transition over to our circle with your question, and all you need is a pen and your strip of paper. You can leave everything else at your table. And we're all teachers and educators, so we're going to work together to make sure we all fit in that circle together and get the furniture right. Sound like a plan? So I'll give you time to write your question and transition over there. Okay, so we are going to get started, and what we're going to have people do is, again, we're going to maintain intellectual safety, which means you can ask any question or state any point of view as long as you're being respectful of everyone in the group. We are going to pass the ball around. You're going to just say your name, and you're going to say your question out loud. And at this point, the only thing we want people to raise their hand is if they need something clarified in the question, like the terminology or something like that, not the meaning of it. There's going to be plenty of time for discussion, but just if you don't understand it. Listen carefully, because what we're going to do is after this, we're all going to stand up, and you get 2 votes. And with your pen, you're going to go, when you're pal with your question, you're going to lay it down in front of you, and we're all going to stand up and go put our marks on either the 2 questions that we want to talk about, or we can put both of our marks on one question if we really want to talk about that one. This can be done in lots of different ways. A lot of times we write it up on the board, or we have kids have whiteboards, but for the sake of our large group today, this is how we're going to do it. Okay, everybody got it? Everybody got it? Okay, would you like to start us off?
Sure, but can I ask a question first?
Yes.
So with the intellectual safety, I'm just wondering if something has gone before this to establish like inclusion and all of that, so you're not just starting by asking a question that's gonna... This
is a abbreviated version, and yes, we would work on an intellectual safety, we'd make the community ball, there's so many other layers. We just want to be able to model this process for you today.
Okay, so our name and our question?
Name and your question.
Okay. So Rebecca, and how would Twinkle's success be duplicated? Would a government bureaucracy have to be developed, and what about enforcement?
Great.
I really like this ball. I was looking for the hat to I'm using.
Aloha, my name is Chris, and my question is, how can we ensure that everyone in our community has a safe place they can call home?
And Mary Beth, my question is, what's holding the state back from creating camps?
I'm Lisa. My question is there a way to make being homeless acceptable?
I'm Kelly. How can we establish other communities with similar democratic principles, respect, unity, and values?
Hello, I'm Brandon. As an educator and a contributing member of society, how do I best approach the issue of homeless children and the impact homelessness has on their lives?
I'm Julia, and my question is if this one community can thrive and respect one another, why can't our own leaders effectively instill that with our state, nation, etc.?
I'm Keith. Is it fair to allow people to live on state land for free?
Hi, I'm Lisa. How do we help more people develop empathy rather than judgment of the homeless?
Hi, I'm Ingrid. I wrote, what supports are needed to fund these lands?
I'm Allison. How can we as a state support this initiative and move people towards stable homes, yet respect the community that they have developed?
Jessica, where are they now?
I'm Grace. My question is, what are some solutions to solve our homelessness problem? And I want to add on, is it even a problem?
Grace! Grace is my student! Okay. Hi, Grace! Cool.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I asked, what does camp leadership view as their most critical current need?
Lenora, why don't the homeless want to go into temporary housing?
I'm April, and how can we change some view camps like Twinkles as a problem, and how can we change perspective to see it more as a solution?
I'm Kimberly. Most homeless individuals won't accept shelter rules. Why?
I'm Liz. The homeless encampment is a good model of a community that works for its members. But what will happen when a Twinkle is no longer there?
I'm Tiff. What can our students do to help or be involved?
Jamie, what are some of the top solutions being discussed right now between state and communities such as the one showcased?
Shauna, why does Hawaii have the highest rate of homeless? Is it weather, cost of living?
Hi, I'm Coral. How can we create a world where the people that are affected make more of the decision?
Hi, I'm Katie. How can we apply what other cities, states, or countries are doing with success in Hawaii?
Hi, I'm Emily. Put yourself in Twinkle's position. How would you run the camp?
I'm Annie. What makes a community successful and acceptable?
I'm Jonna. How has Twinkle's leadership prevented a state sweep?
I'm James. How do people find the right community to join where they will belong and fit in?
I'm Wendy. What kind of schooling do the homeless children receive?
I'm Ashley. To what extent is homelessness and racism in Hawaii linked, and is it justified if so?
My name is Anne. My question is, what do the homeless think the solution is?
Oh, my name is Sonia. My question is, what is a neighborhood?
I'm Tracy. My question is, how does Twinkle and his community keep the public safe from their sanitary functions?
I'm Adrian. Is homelessness always bad?
My name is Lorella. My question is, why are they so happy if they're homeless?
I'm Sherry, and my question is, I'm wondering if people see this video, their perspective on the homeless would change.
I'm Stacy, and I'm wondering why do some of the homeless people choose not to go to shelters?
My name is Junko, and my question is, do houseless people want anyone to help?
Hi, I'm Joni. Can I pass?
I'm Nanette, and I'm thankful to Chad because I was stuck in my brain about a question, and he said just wonder. So I wonder about the woman who leads the group. I wonder about her life, her childhood, her choices, her dreams.
I'm Abraham, and I wonder how can the state or we ensure that all camps stay alcohol and drug free for underage children?
I'm Janisa, and I said, how as teachers can we support children who come from homeless backgrounds?
I'm Cindy, and my question was, how can we find a balance between houseless needs and the rest of the community's rights?
Hi, I'm Amanda. How as a teacher can I help create a solution to this very real issue that I know some of my students face?
So these are fantastic questions. All of them are. This is going to be a tough choice. I just want to have a kind of metacognition step. As a teacher, by going through this process, already this is sharing multiple perspectives. You're getting to hear how every single person that had that similar experience, how they engaged with it, and the perspective that they're coming from. So in addition to the dialogue and discussion that happens, also by having each child share a question is a way to open people to multiple perspectives and get them used to that. People are going to have different ways of engaging with material. So with that said, I'm going to invite everybody to put their question down and take your time. You have 2 votes. You're going to stand up. You can go reread some questions and use tally marks to put where you're going to place your 2 votes. How many is this? Wait. Okay, did everybody get a chance to vote? I believe the most votes are here with 7. Does anybody have one with more than 7? Okay, is this yours? Oh, yeah. Keith? All right. Oh, you have more than 7? 11. Sorry, Keith. I just like got your heart rate up, man. And then, okay, so 11. And tell me your name again. Cindy. Okay, so Cindy's question is, how can we find a balance between their needs, the houseless, and other people's rights? So Chad's going to introduce how we get this started. And normally we'd have kids write, but just for the sake of time today, we're going to get started. But I'm going to read it one more time. How can we find a balance between their needs and other people's rights?
So take this moment and imagine that you were writing and craft your initial response to that question. So we're providing some think time so everybody in the circle has already thought about this question so you're not getting caught off guard.
Again, it's how can we find a balance between their needs and other people's rights?
And so after we provide people or our students with time to provide that initial thought, the person whose question got voted starts us off. And they can tell us just a little bit about the background, where that came from, and provide the first possible answer. And then what happens is hands go up, and we really just try to start digging and trying to really try to get as far into the deep end of the pool, as our students like to think, as possible. The goal isn't necessarily to come up with the answer, it's to explore many answers. And oftentimes, my high school students would say that the purpose is to get confused. That's really what we're trying to get. So without saying any more, we don't like to call the person the winner because this isn't a competition, but the person that was selected is going to start us off. So you can just tell us the background, provide us the first answer, then our hands will go up and we'll start digging.
And you're going to take the ball. And again, the rules of the ball is only the person with the ball is the speaker. The person with the ball is going to choose who speaks next, and you always have the right to pass.
I like what I saw in the video. I really liked their organization and their sense of community. I felt like they had a home. I did feel like they have a home. But I've encountered being uncomfortable going into some places that I have traditionally had the right to go to as a child for fishing or camping. And I wonder how to balance their right or need for a home with my right or need to go to that place that I've traditionally been allowed to go.
Okay.
So thank you for that. I really like what you said about their right and your right, because I think with the question, why I didn't mark it was because I think both groups, everybody has rights and everybody has needs. So how, to me, it's more about like how do we more deeply understand the needs and the rights of everyone else. I don't know if I have a solution, but I think that's an important distinction to make, that we all have needs and we all have rights. And like those lines are very blurry in this situation because of people's fear, I think.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like it comes back to the question maybe of empathy, where people are more willing to give up a right or be less concrete about a right if it can yield something for other people that are in need or in greater need. So maybe you're more willing to give up and yield with empathy, with an understanding.
When I think of this question, I think of that illustration with the kids at the baseball game and what's equal and what's fair. And so you have the same level boxes, but the kid who's shorter is on the same box as the taller kid, and he cannot see. And then there's a second cartoon where you give him what he needs or what's fair for him, and he has a little higher box, but now he's at the same level and he can see exactly what everybody else is seeing. So do we start with them? What are their needs? What do they need to survive and thrive first? And then bring in the community, I don't know, and see. It's hard to make that balance, right? Because you do have to give them what they need to survive as humans. And is it that they're choosing not to go forward and find other living, or is it dangerous in another situation? Is this the most safe place for them, right? And then finding the balance to the second. So I guess I don't really have an answer either, but just another way of, I guess, looking and thinking about it.
So I have a clarifying question. So we're talking about needs and rights. And it was kind of assumed that everybody has a right, but I'm wondering if that's true. Do we really practice that everybody has the same rights?
That's what was in my mind about what do we mean by right, and then what are the rights, what is the rights, and historically where did they come from? And I just read the book, and then there were none 2 days ago, and so I'm wondering if culturally living on the land, sustainable community, they are living the right as they see it in their way of being. And when two rights are in conflict, yikes, I have no idea. I have no idea. I have nothing except empathy, and I need better thinkers than me, because I'll just cry.
And one of the ideas that I'm thinking about as I'm hearing everybody provide these perspectives is listening, and how where is listening's role in this idea of trying to figure out rights. And when I say listening, I don't mean hearing. I mean actually truly listening. And I'm wondering are these right conflicts or these conflicts happening because we've never really truly understood or learned how to listen to one another?
I like to look back historically and look at the Aina and how it was held by Old Hawaiian system, Ahupua'a system, and then look at how it is today. And do we have the right to have ownership of land?
I teach 4th grade social studies and that idea of ahupua'a, and I see what you're saying, but for sure in ancient Hawaii, everybody took care to respect and care for the land in their ahupua'a that they were sharing. So I saw Twinkle's camp had a way of showing respect and care for the land. And I'm wondering if that's what made it successful. Could we, community, take that idea and then extend it, okay, you know what I mean, further? She has something good going. Could we extend it further to make it more successful so that, you know, if, I'm guessing that guy had fishing concerns, maybe, you know, access to the land. Is there a way to extend it further to make sure they keep their right and respect the land, and, you know, maintaining other people's concerns? Because that park that just got wrecked for Honolulu taxpayers, that's how many hundreds of $1,000s coming out of your folks' pockets. That group wasn't respectful to everybody else, and that is your concern.
So the video made me but of course I felt empathetic to this particular leader and his camp. Now I'm wondering, what if this camp were in Waikiki? Would we feel the same way about it? Or would we all of a sudden not be empathetic and say, we can't have that here because it's our tourist industry, this is how our state gets, state grows, and I'm just wondering how, if that would change some of the perspective.
Thanks.
Nice.
So my empathy goes out towards the kids in the video, and mainly because of the needs, the individual needs of the campers or the homeless as they're labeled. And is that going to affect those kids with this issue of homelessness, maybe because their families or their parents, being offspring of them, weren't able to function in society, maybe weren't educated, and how do we prevent that from growing, and how do we prevent that from happening to get to the solution which we need to find without it just rolling over into something that they grow accustomed to as kids. It's not going to help their education in any sense, especially when they come to school hungry or without shoes or slippers or any of the learning tools that we have to, or we expect their families to offer them. So it's a tremendously hard issue, and it's a very emotional issue, and there's just a lot of feelings going around in the room right now that I'm experiencing. So, but on a side note, I'm going to be using this in my classroom. This is a great way to open up dialogue.
Thank you.
Who's next?
We have time for maybe one more. Yeah.
In the other sense, I think I see that the kids were happy. They were going to the beach. They were with their families. So I didn't feel depressed in this particular camp. In others, maybe. I have encountered some homeless kids, and there's different experiences. So it's really case by case. And when you talk about education, I saw education there. She's teaching them leadership. The women are there taking the leadership, probably because they're stronger. They have a communal living. Sorry. I don't know the other issues, of course, like drugs and other stuff, but some of the kids I encountered were not necessarily sad to be in those conditions. So I don't think when we say we educate those kids, they're already being educated by their own parents on their own ways, because most of them are Hawaiians in that particular camp, or Pacific Islanders. And so I don't know what to say. That I think that came to my question about the neighborhood. I saw a neighborhood. I saw a neighborhood that was working, that had a structure, that had rules, and that really thought about the kids. She thought mostly about the kids, that's what she said. So I saw Kupuna as somebody who is a model. I don't have anything else to say about that, because it's not just my way of living. So, okay.
I just can
Sure.
Yeah. I love that you see the positiveness in that, and I think that's a very important thing to do in any situation, any issue. You picked out what was positive
in those aspects, and I truly agree with those things you say. And I have a tendency to look more at what we need to do to prepare, and what we need to offer our kids, what they need as far as tools and ability and education. So I didn't by any means say that they were being neglected to the point where they weren't learning. I understand you almost have to if you're evolving in any situation. Kids are going to learn to survive. So don't think that I was just being derogatory and just negative. I just wonder if we can give more. And then obviously the solution, they might feel they're comfortable. Those children might feel. But we all know, as we all sit here, the advantages of knowing more. And can we provide more knowledge to them? And are they getting, not culturally and that in a specific environment, the knowledge that they need to know, but what else can we offer them as well? And those are the things that, and I'm not so much emphasizing the adults in the camps. I mean the kids, the young kids.
Okay. So ring. The bell's going to ring. So I'm going to have, Chad's going to close us out, because this is truly what happens in a classroom, right? The bell does ring. We go on to wherever we're going next. But it's also modeled that people are engaged and they want to keep talking about this.
And this is just a small poo-poo of what this might feel like in your class. And the reason why we want to do it with a large group is oftentimes people think like, oh, you can do that with like 15 kids. Like, no, we can do it with 100 people if we had to. And so we're going to do two things before we leave. The first thing we can do is we want to evaluate how we did. I'm going to ask 2 questions, and I want to show your thumbs. This is like totally awesome. Wow, we have a lot of room to grow. And so the first question is going to be about the community. Was it intellectually safe in here today? Okay, my second question is going to be about the inquiry. Did we start to scratch beneath the surface of our question? Did we dig deep? Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do is, this is more of a personal connection. I want you to think about one idea, thought, or question that you now have based on our time together in this circle. So one thought, idea, or question that you now have, and put it in Twitter form, 140 characters or less. And I want you to turn to the person next to you and say your idea that you're leaving with, and then listen to theirs. And the reason why we're asking you to do this is because you're taking ownership of what you learned today. If we leave without having done this, who knows what we learned? That was like, oh, that was cool, but I want to know, what is it that you learned? You're taking ownership of this process. Go. No, just whoever.
I guess
Okay, unfortunately, we are out of time. Or as a magic word that Dr. J uses, oot, out of time. So thank you very much for coming to our session. I hope that you're taking away something that you can implement into your classroom tomorrow. If you want to learn more about our work, you can go to our website, p4chawaii.org. And there's plenty of spaces on there. Amber's done extensive writing, so you can find everything that she's referenced if you just do a quick Google search.
And I have a card up front if anybody wants a link to the video or a copy of our PowerPoint for today. But again, we hope to hear from you. We offer classes at the University of Hawaii, professional development classes. You can come and get a certificate from the College of Ed in Philosophy for Children. What else am I forgetting? Visits to model schools. We have model schools where the whole school has adopted this, and it's helped to change the culture of the entire school. So we have some of our model schools here, and we arrange visits for teachers to go and see it in their classroom. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I know I think we're already past our time. So have a great rest of your conference.